Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording on 17 African cultural values to know before you travel to Africa. Now, before we get started, once again, please let me encourage you to open up to the correct part of today's lesson and to fill in the chart on key tips and tricks that you might want to know before traveling to Africa. The main reason why this is part of your lesson on culture is because it's very true that when you travel to different places, it really helps to know the cultural traits and habits and norms that are a key part of their culture so that we might better comply to it, but also understand it more objectively. So, while we get started here, please let me preface the reading like this. There's something to be said about a culture and all the types of cultural attributes that combine to form our understanding about what a culture is all about. In regards to Africa, as unique and diverse as the continent is, there are some common traits of etiquette, politeness, and manners that must be understood to understand their culture better. So let's go ahead and get started. In an effort to contextualize and be mindful of a complex mindset and worldview, here are a few African cultural values to be aware of when traveling in Africa. Number one is greeting. Hello and a handshake. So greeting people in Africa is one of the most important things you can do. A quick hello, paired with a handshake, is a sufficient way to make a positive first impression with anyone. Number two, show respect to elders. African cultural values are based on a foundation of the past and present, a leading reason why elders were so well respected. So always acknowledge an elder, let them ask questions, and during mealtime, elders should be served first. Number three, pointing at things. So pointing at someone or something with an index finger is usually considered rude or just straight offensive. It's not something you want to do. Different ethnic groups have different ways of pointing, but the method I usually employ is poking with my chin in the right direction and widening my eyes. Number four is overhand motion calling. So avoid motioning to call a person with an upwards palm. The preferred method is to call someone over with the palm facing down and pulling the fingers inwards. Next is the sole of the foot. Just like many cultures around the world, the very bottom of your foot is the very dirtiest part of your body, so try not to directly point your foot sole towards anyone at any time. Number six is eat with the right hand. You might have heard this before, but the right hand is for eating food, and the left hand is reserved for the unsanitary task of what happens afterward. Whatever you do, don't touch African food with your left hand. Number seven, hissing and kissing sounds. To call the attention of someone is often performed with a hissing or loud smack of the lips. If you're not expecting it, the sounds might come as a surprise, but it's totally acceptable and very common. Number eight, silence is an African value. Don't be alarmed or nervous with spans of silence during African conversation. When there's something to be said, it will be said. When there's nothing to be said, silence is perfectly fine. There's no need to feel uneasy during a period of silence in Africa. Just take the time to just enjoy the presence of others. Number nine, time. A little less important. Despite the use of clocks to tell what time it is, African clocks work differently. Things fall into place as they unfold. An African worldview does not focus far into the future, but dwells more on the past events and whatever is happening currently. Future scheduled times can't be rushed, and thinking so will only make one or more frustrated. Number 10, use flexibility. Africa will teach you to be flexible. Closely relating to how future time is of less importance, schedules aren't always at the forefront of lifestyle. So if a plan gets shut down or changes drastically, there's not always something you can do besides accept it and continue with the positive attitude. Number 11, do not publicly show anger, frustration, or impatience. So those circumstances have potential to become frustrating. It's highly important to not publicly display any sort of negative feeling in public. Africans have incredible self-control, so being careful not to offend or shame anyone in public. Number 12 is positive communication. So positive communication is a key African cultural value, along with not displaying public negativity. There are countless ways to express good or okay. Don't immediately get into a discussion about a hardship or a struggle. These topics can gradually be brought forth. Number 13 is relationships matter. With future time a little less important, current time is of extreme value. Meeting people and spending time with others to develop lasting relationships is an aspect of African culture that is truly cherished. Number 14, don't talk too much during a meal. This simple small talk is permissible, but don't try to talk too much business or seriousness during a meal. Serious issues are handled after the meal. Number 15 is receive a gift with both hands. If someone graciously gives you a gift, a nonverbal way to show extreme thankfulness is to accept it, both hands outstretched. Number 16, the unstated sorry we're out. There will be inevitably a circumstance in Africa where you go to a restaurant, order a dish, and a totally different dish is served to you. No questions asked. You will naturally complain, saying, "This is not the dish I ordered." The waiter will shyly back away as we tell you what you ordered was not available. It can be a bit frustrating to say that at least remember numbers 10, 11, and 12, and that African flexibility. Number 17 is personal space. So it might seem odd or even drive you crazy when you're the only person on an empty bus and another person gets on and sits down next to you. Imagine growing up in a single room with 10 people living together, or living with a clan of extended family. Your idea of personal space might be a little different, thinking in African terms. In the end, remember that Africans are extremely gracious and caring people, ready to go the extra mile to respect the service of others. Hopefully, if we can understand a bit of African cultural values, we travel to Africa, we can make a positive impression, showing respect that will leave lasting memories. So as you guys can see, these are some of the helpful tips and tricks to understand what it takes to not only communicate, but to successfully assimilate into Africa and to keep cultural values, cues, manners, and etiquette in mind. Good luck completing the rest of the chart and the rest of the lesson.